presidency in December 2014, after what was a very successful Australian presidency. We've had an ambitious agenda, an intense work plan. We're now almost 2/3 into our term. A lot has happened. Some more will happen in the lead up to the culmination, of course, of the Turkish presidency, the November 15th, 16th summit in Antalya. The G20 functions on the basis of seeking collective solutions to address broad range of international economic challenges. This is the core mandate of the forum, and this mandate requires a multi-year focus, therefore our premise was that we needed to build on the G20's multi-year agenda, but reflect particular themes we see as important for the particular year that we would be leading this forum. And in terms of the priorities of Turkish presidency, we have formulated them under 3 I's, if you will: inclusiveness, implementation, and investment for growth. This has been kind of the keywords that we have been emphasizing since we took over the presidency. Let me take them one by one and kind of explain to you what we meant by these emphases. Implementation, as the High Commissioner has pointed out, is a key task in the sense that we need to turn our words into actions. That is absolutely vital for the credibility of the forum, but also for us to reach our objectives. The G20 member countries have collectively committed themselves to policy measures that are over 1,000 in total. These are estimated to lift the G20 growth by an additional 2 or 2.1% over the next 5 years. This is the so-called 2 in 5 target, and the implementation of this is crucial. Okay, I'll speak up. In this regard, the accountability that we set for ourselves to implement our growth strategies will be key. With the assistance, of course, of the relevant international organizations, each member country has selected from their national growth strategies 5 to 8 commitments for a total of 134 commitments, which is expected to have impact on their growth. Now, what we have come up with is that since this is, of course, a very multi-year agenda item, our contribution, we thought, would be in the form of providing the first accountability report on how much progress we have collectively made towards our growth target. And this will be presented to the G20 leaders when they meet in Antalya in November. Implementation, of course, will be a dynamic process. Strategies will be reviewed, adjusted according to changing conditions, and I think this first accountability report would form a basis for this. Of course, the quantity as well as the quality as well as the quantity of the growth is also very important. This is why we believe that we need to work towards economic growth being inclusive and benefits are shared by all. I will come to our inclusive focus after touching on the investments a little bit. With investments, we mean not just investments per se, but also quality investments. It's of course, a priority for the G20 because investment plays an important role in unlocking growth and generating new jobs. We all need investment, not just investment, but quality investment. Globally, there is a large infrastructure investment gap, both in advanced and also in developing countries. In fact, developing quality, reliable, sustainable, and resilient infrastructure has been identified as a sustainable development goal by the UN, and that we know that the public sector cannot meet the global investment gap alone by itself, and we're talking about a figure estimated by the OECD as some $70 trillion until 2030. This cannot be met by the governments alone, and we would need some $8 trillion of investment just for the next decade alone in Asia. The Turkish presidency has proposed that G20 countries prepare concrete national investment strategies to support their national growth strategies adopted last year. These strategies that we called for will include measures to attract long-term institutional investors, promote improved access to finance by the SMEs, improve the regulatory frameworks, improve efficiency, of course, of public investment, and support alternative sources. Turkey has itself is nearing completion of its national investment strategy, and we plan to have them submitted, all the strategies to be submitted for the approval of the G20 leaders in Antalya. This, we believe, will be an important message to the world that would underscore the importance that G20 countries attach to investment as a critical element of boosting the growth potential of our economies. Now, of course, I'm not in a position to pick and choose among the three priorities of the Turkish presidency, but one thing that I personally felt was particularly important was the third I, which is the inclusiveness. The G20's, of course, the overarching purpose is to foster strong, sustainable, and balanced growth. One of the key priorities of the Turkish presidency is to add inclusive growth also to this important formulation. Inclusiveness is important because not just because we have a moral obligation, and we do, to address inequality, but also because we know that inequality within our societies and also internationally hinders economic growth. Inequality not only of incomes but also of opportunities is a source of social and political instability in a range of countries. Therefore, we are focusing on the two dimensions of inclusiveness, both within and across countries. Of course, worsened by the effects of the global financial crisis, inequality has been increasing visibly in a number of our countries. The share of the wealthiest 1% in our economies is rising, and share of wage income is falling behind the rate of economic growth. This reducing the mismatch between the skills demanded by employers and the skill of job seekers, making the transition from school to work more efficient, focusing, of course, on female participation and youth unemployment, are important elements of Turkey's inclusiveness agenda. Last year, of course, the G20 made a commitment to reduce the gender gap in labor force participation by 25% until 2025, and this is our 25 by 25 target. Effective implementation of this target will bring an additional 100 million women into the workforce. This year, during the Turkish presidency, we are striving to achieve a collective G20 target for youth unemployment, a problem which affects advanced and developing countries alike and have important, of course, consequences for the long-term potential of our economies. G20 labor and employment ministers met in Ankara early in September 2015, this year, and agreed to reduce the share of those young people who are most at risk of being left permanently behind in the labor market by 15% until 2025. The target group, the particular target group of this goal, has been identified by the ministers as low-skilled or informally employed young people, and the young people who are neither in employment nor in education nor in training. So the so-called NEETs. My professor some 3 decades back in college warned me that if you're dealing with international affairs, you must be ready to memorize a lot of abbreviations and acronyms. And my career so far is living up to it. I don't know how many acronyms I know, but I estimate it to be an additional 10 or 15 a year. But this is a useful acronym. It's a target group that we are striving to address in terms of our inclusiveness agenda. Of course, another focus is are the small and medium-sized enterprises. These are another important element of the inclusiveness agenda, and a cross-cutting theme, of course, of our presidency, considering their share in economic activity, and the fact that in many countries up to 80% employment is generated by small to medium enterprises. The SMEs are important to help us reach our goal of ensuring that all segments of our of societies have access to benefits of growth and prosperity. Therefore, under Turkish presidency, we are striving to establish we have set out to establish for the first time a World SME Forum in cooperation with the International Chamber of Commerce. We want the SME Forum to be the global voice of the SMEs, a platform representing their interests, supporting them to meet the various challenges they meet, and serve, of course, as an advocacy forum for them. Of course, inclusiveness is not only important within countries, but also across countries, among countries. And policy measures implemented by the G20 have positive impact not only in G20 countries themselves, but also on the entire world economy, including in low-income developing countries, the so-called LIDCs. Therefore, this year, during our presidency, in all work streams of the G20, we are highlighting linkages with the LIDCs. We're underscoring the message that the G20 is not only concerned about its own interests, but it's strongly committed to ensure that its policies benefit the entire world economy. This year is a pivotal year in this regard for development, and we have crafted our inclusiveness agenda with this in mind, working across international organizations with them and towards common objectives. 2015 is in fact critical, is important in a number of areas, a kind of a turning point in a number of areas, and our 3 I's apply to many of these priorities. For instance, in the Global Sustainable Development Agenda, 2015 is an important year. We had the 3rd International Conference on Financing for Development in Addis Ababa in July, and we will have the SDG Summit in New York in September, and the COP21 to the UNFCCC in Paris in December. We have to work towards, or in the context of this timelines and agenda, and the Turkish presidency attached importance to ensuring that our actions and decisions complement and strengthen the work being undertaken in these various fora. There might be different approaches at this stage on how to integrate the goals and targets into the September package, but we are optimistic that the end product of the efforts will be universal, inclusive, and implementable agenda which leaves no one behind. Of course, one important meeting this year in the context of the G20 was the May meeting in Istanbul of the G20 agriculture ministers. This was only the second time in G20 history that agriculture ministers have met. The central theme of the meeting was how the G20 can best support progress towards the achievement of sustainable food systems with a particular focus on food losses and waste. With world population now expected to reach over 9 billion by 2050, changing food consumption patterns as a result of income growth and urbanization, food production will need to increase by some 60%. This is a huge requirement. The cost of producing food that is wasted amounts to some $1 trillion, $1 trillion each year. And if we reduce food losses and waste to zero, it would give us additional food to feed 2 billion people. Climate change is critical, is another factor adding to the difficulties of reconciling the balance between food needs and production possibilities. The carbon footprint of producing wasted and lost food is estimated at 7% of global greenhouse gas released into the atmosphere each year. The G20 agriculture ministers therefore agreed a joint communiqué in which they reaffirmed their commitment to work together to meet the challenge of global food security and nutrition, which is a concern for G20 and non-G20 countries alike. At that meeting, they underlined the importance of sustainable food systems in meeting this challenge and highlighted food loss and waste as a global problem with important economic, social, and environmental consequences. One thing they agreed on was to establish a common platform together with the FAO and other relevant international organizations, building on existing systems, of course, for sharing information and experiences in measuring and reducing food loss and waste. They also agreed to prepare a G20 action plan on food security and sustainable food systems for consideration at the Antalya Leaders Summit. Energy was also an important emphasis during this year. Energy access is the first of the energy principles that the G20 adopted last year. Energy access affects 1/5 of world population. Sub-Saharan Africa is the region which is most affected by this problem, with around 2/3 or 650 million people living in Sub-Saharan Africa not having access to regular electricity. Again, in cooperation with the other relevant fora, international organizations, the coordination of the UN Sustainable Energy for All initiative, we are aiming now to develop a G20 action plan to help tackle the problem of access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. We recognize that energy access is a major challenge for some countries in the Asia-Pacific as well, and this year our focus is to establish the general framework with a particular focus on Sub-Saharan Africa. Maybe next year's Asia-Pacific could be the highlight of the Chinese presidency or other presidencies. G20's added value, of course, could be in enhancing domestic resource mobilization in developing countries by mobilizing additional financial resources by reducing global average cost of transferring remittances, promoting public-private partnerships, and encouraging innovative technologies, especially in the field of energy. Last but probably not least, the remittance flows is an important work area. The remittances are a significant source of income for many developing countries, including some APEC countries. The World Bank says that these remittance flows have reached a total of $435 billion in 2014 and projected to increase to $454 billion by the end of this year. The G20 is committed to reducing the global average cost of transferring remittances to 5%. Under Turkey's presidency, we are developing country-led plans this year to progress towards this target. Of course, there are other focus